Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar that is being co-organized by the Buffett Institute for Global Affairs at Northwestern University and the Committee on Global Thought at Columbia University. My name is Alex Cooley, and I'm filling in for the great Adam Tooze, who is at a citizenship swearing-in ceremony at the moment. So I am a professor of political science at Barnard College, Adam's colleague on the Committee on Global Thought at Columbia. And it is just a great pleasure and privilege to be moderating this session with four distinguished panelists. The topic is the government against the university. Reports from Colombia, Hungary, Poland, and Turkey. And we're asking questions that are on the minds, I think, of many faculty and administrators and students across the United States at the moment. What happens when governments view universities as adversaries? How have universities defended academic freedom? And how much autonomy over internal decision-making should universities concede in the face of what seem like existential threats? We have four panelists who have experienced different rounds of this in different geographical and political settings. And so we are grateful to draw upon their expertise. I'm going to introduce them with their short bios and would encourage everyone to look at their longer bios in the event announcement and on their web pages. First, we'll have István. He is the director of the Vera and Donald Blinken Open Society Archives and professor at the Department of History at Central European University. He will be followed by Johanna Mick Clausen, who's an economist and philosopher and director of internationalization at the Universidad de los Andes. Candan is an independent filmmaker and formerly a faculty member at Boğaziçi University in Istanbul in Turkey. And Andrzej Rychard is a professor of sociology and director of the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology of the Polish Academy of Sciences. Welcome to you all. Our sort of opening prompt to our panelists is to start out by briefly laying out the situation in their respective institution and country, and perhaps telling us a bit about the political challenge you are confronting, and what might you have wished that you had understood about the dynamics of university conflicts at the time in which this was happening. So István, let's start off with you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. For me, the fight for academic freedom is part of academic freedom. What's happening in my country is not a surprise for me. But what's happening in Hungary is not government versus the university. It's a government against science, a government against the reason, a government against intellectuals, against sanity. When the right-wing Orbán government came back to power in 2010, one of their first acts was to start a court case against philosophers, including Agnes Heller, the Hannah Arendt professor at New School, for their previous work, accusing them of embezzlement and stealing funds from the government. Then it continued with a parliamentary decision which meant exiling the Central European University from Hungary. This university, which I was the first faculty member of, was set up in 1991 when the political changes made it possible for the first time to set up a free independent university. It is an international graduate school in the humanities and social sciences with about 1,500 students from over 100 countries. In the past 30-some years, we had over 20,000 graduate students who finished the university. So the government decided to exile this university, force it out the country, because it's a university which tries to engage in critical thinking, which is an international institution. So the university, which has just finished building a new campus in the center of the city, was forced to move to Vienna. Some of us decided to stay despite the decision of the government. And although we do not have the right to grant degrees, we are not accredited, we decided to set up an invisible university in Hungary. The invisible university continues a long Central European tradition, which Andrzej, Rychard knows very well, because this tradition originates from Poland, from the second half of the 19th century, when under Russian rule, academics were fired from universities for political reasons, and they decided to give seminars in their homes, and they had to move from home to home. This is why it was called a flying university. And this tradition was resurrected during the Nazi times in Poland, and then after the Second World War, during the communist rule, and not only in Poland, but in all the other Central European countries. When I was a university student, I also took part at an invisible university program in Budapest. So we set up an invisible university in April 2022, just a few weeks after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And at the moment, we have 500 Ukrainian students. And we also started a West Balkan Invisible University. And next year, we decided to start a global invisible university. But the forcing the CEU to leave the country was just the first step. Afterwards, the government decided to nationalize the research institutes of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, privatize all the property of the academy, privatize the state universities, and Orbán appointed boards from among the oligarchs around him and his trusted people. And now there are only 4 remaining public universities in the whole country. All the other universities became taken over by the government. So this is the situation in Hungary at the moment.
István, thanks very much indeed. Also for giving us a sense of the comprehensive sweep and scope of this takeover. Johanna, next to you and the situation in Colombia.
Thank you, Alex. Well, in Colombia, things are different in a way. Our current president, Gustavo Petro, comes from a leftist government. And one would think this is good news for universities. It hasn't been so. In Colombia, attacks on higher education are often framed through narratives of elitism and inequality. Programs like ICETEX, which provide loans to students, including those attending private universities, are undergoing reforms that could leave nearly 200,000 students unable to continue their studies next semester. These kinds of programs that fund education are not criticized for being inefficient or inexpensive, but for being morally unjust. Why should public money fund private education? However, this framing ignores a much complex reality. Admission to Colombia's public universities is quite competitive, and only students with high academic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds that back that performance can actually access public education. Half of the students in Colombia go to private universities through especially first-generation students, thanks to their family sacrifices, educational loans, institutional support, and to a lesser extent, public funds attend various private universities across the country. 305 accredited institutions in the country. Of the 305 accredited institutions, 218 are private. So an attack to private education is an attack to education as a whole. And to make things worse, the government has not done anything to strengthen public universities. Research funding has been drastically reduced. In fact, 2025 marks the lowest level of public investment in higher education in over 15 years. The Ministry of Science has been left largely inoperative. And we've had 3 ministers of education in less than 3 years. This shows a great disdain for the sector. To add fuel to the fire, the current Minister of Education, Daniel Rojas, not only tweets with spelling mistakes, but famously failed his master's thesis defense at Universidad Nacional. When asked about this, President Petro responded that, "Don't worry, Minister, I didn't submit a thesis either because they required an econometric study, and I don't believe in econometrics." So there's a way in which not only the actions of the government affect education, but the idea that education is not important. And this his narrative has also had an impact in the topics that we can apply for research. So then again, unlike the US, for example, where words like diversity and biodiversity and climate change are banned, we are encouraged to apply for those kind of research. One would think perfect paradise. But the thing is, we also require pharmaceuticals and basic science and bridges and all of the other things that also require funding. Currently, our president stopped gas explorations. Now we import gas from Venezuela. So it's not very easy to kind of describe the attack that we have been facing. Universidad de los Andes was the first private, non-confessional, non-partist university in the country. It was founded in 1948 in a high of violence. It was a bet on education. We, from the start, have been free from both state and church, and we have focused on training leaders. We have been quite successful. A lot of our ministers come from Universidad de los Andes. So that legacy makes us an easy target for a president who come with a speech to dismantle the establishment. So all public universities have been under attack, and we in particular have been quite in the middle of the debate.
Thanks so much for that overview, and especially for pointing us to this attack on education as elitist. And these are certainly sort of themes that we're hearing now in the US in a similar fashion. John, let's go to you and your experiences in Turkey.
Thank you for the webinar, and thank you for the organization. I find myself in absurd situations these days. As you alluded to, officially on paper, I'm not part of Boğaziçi University faculty since my 3rd dismissal in July 2023, but in reality, I'm very much part of Boğaziçi University faculty and the resistance for an autonomous, free and democratic university, which has been going on for more than 4 years, and to be exact, for 1,573 days as of today. As a Boğaziçi University faculty member, today I spent the whole day at the main courthouse in Istanbul with my colleagues, my students, and alums, following the trials of our students who have been arrested and tried for exercising their constitutionally protected right to protest the government last month, when the university diploma of the elected mayor of Istanbul was revoked, followed by his imprisonment by the government. As in other countries, the struggle for institutional autonomy of the universities and academic freedom has been continuing for decades in Turkey, and in a few minutes, I'd like to give you a very brief historical overview. Following the 1980 military coup in Turkey, the Council of Higher Education was established in 1981 to restructure and centralize the higher education system in Turkey. As this council functioned under the direct influence of the 1980 military regime, many progressive leftist dissident academics were dismissed, forced to resign, or marginalized. This led to the erosion of university autonomy, bureaucratization, and central control, as well as top-down model of university governance, suppression of academic freedom, and the establishment of a pro-government conformist academic culture. Boğaziçi University played a pioneering role in the later years, establishing democratic university president elections in Turkey. In 1992, the university's faculty independently conducted internal elections to select candidates for the president of the university. This initiative led to the election of our first elected president, marking the first time a Turkish university implemented such a democratic process. This model set a precedent for other universities in the country. In 2012, there was a University Senate decision outlining universities' principles regarding institutional autonomy, academic freedom, and democratic governance, which we still regard as our university's, in a way, internal constitution. In 2016, over 2,000 academics in Turkey signed a peace petition titled, "We will not be a party to this crime," calling on the Turkish government to halt human rights violations against the civilian population in the Kurdish regions of the country. The signatories of this Academics for Peace declaration immediately drew the ire of the government, which resulted in investigations, threats, and later even arrests and imprisonment of academics. Subsequently, hundreds of academics were put on trial, which lasted for years, and I was one of those academics put on trial. In July 2016, a failed military coup attempt by the Islamist Gülen movement in Turkey was used for political gain by the Erdogan regime, resulting in the declaration of a state of emergency, leading the way to Erdogan ruling by presidential decrees. The purge of supporters of this Gülen movement in academia was an excuse to purge many dissident and leftist academics by presidential decrees, including approximately 400 academics for peace. During this time of state of emergency and ruling by decrees, there was one presidential decree in October 2016 that granted President Erdogan the authority to directly appoint university presidents in Turkey. It was during this time, against our will, our newly re-elected president was not appointed by President Erdogan, and instead another Boğaziçi University faculty member who didn't even run for election was appointed as the new president. In the beginning of 2021, as the 4-year term of the first appointed president was over, we were naively expecting the government to reappoint the former president. Instead, someone nobody even heard of, somebody who had been politically affiliated with the ruling Justice and Development Party, Erdogan's party, was appointed by Erdogan himself. This appointment sparked widespread protests from students, faculty, alumni, who viewed the decision as an infringement of university principles of institutional autonomy, academic freedom, and democratic governance. We, as faculty, issued our first declaration stating, "We do not accept, we do not give up," and began our daily vigils, a symbolic act of turning our backs to the rectorate building, garbed in our academic gowns. There have been heavy-handed crackdowns of student demonstrations, both on our campus, around our campus, and in the city, using internal disciplinary investigations against the students, as well as the police and the judicial system to punish the students, as well as the academics, of course. There have also been dismissals of dissident faculty members, such as myself, and top-down appointment of new faculty members against the will of the departments and without the proper academic selection processes. Nevertheless, the resistance and defense of the university and its principles continue for more than 4 years, as I stated in the beginning.
John, thanks so much. And thanks for giving us an overview of all the types of different interventions against different university communities that the government seems to have been making on the administrative appointment side, on the faculty side, and on the student side in different kinds of capacities. Andrzej, let's go to you and viewpoint in your experience in Poland.
Thank you very much. At the time when I was the director of the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology of the Polish Academy of Science, my term ended as of the beginning of April this year. We have challenged an attempt to limit our academic freedom by the Minister of Higher Education and Science. At that time, this was a coalition ruling party by Law and Justice Party in Poland, who is not now in power, who is now in opposition. And as of the beginning of 2003, in our institute, there is a Center for the Study of Holocaust. Its director, Professor Barbara Engelking, renowned researcher on the Holocaust, in one of the academic interview and media interview, told that in a very, let's say, cautious way, that support for Jews during the German Nazi occupation was not that popular as the popular stereotype says, and the denouncing of Jews was not that rare, actually. And this has been criticized first by the Polish Prime Minister. At that time, Mateusz Morawiecki said that what she said was blurring the truth. Then the Polish Minister of Higher Education and Science said, I am not going to influence the personal policy at the institutes of the Polish Academy of Sciences, but I'm not going to finance the institutions which are doing that things and which are lying in a way. I will not give money for scientists who are insulting Poles. That's the quotation from what he said. Of course, our case is not that dramatic as the cases described before my case. However, he decided not to give us a significant amount of money, which was, by the way, obligatory to give obligatory pay increases in our institutes. We were the only institute, despite the one which didn't need this money, not to be given these additional funds. Then we started to organize the protests. And then in my next possible opportunity, I will tell how we won. And we won, and this was still less dramatic than the situation in Turkey, even less dramatic than the situation in Hungary. But I would say finally that we are not powerless. We have power, and we know how to organize our power, and that's why we succeeded in, let's say, to put it mildly, convincing the minister that he should give us this money. In the meantime, the minister published on his official webpage the information, the message that that Professor Rychard saying that we are trying to censor their autonomy. This is, and he was lying, and this, what he said, it was collection of insultations. For the first time, I have been actually listed as a person on the official page of the ministry. However, it finally finished due to our various supports and support from various communities. It finally finished well, and I hope I will try. I will have the opportunity to tell how it happened, that we succeeded finally.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. And you know, it strikes me that you are describing in all the panels just a range of tactics through which different fields of knowledge, individuals, faculties, departments can be stigmatized and blacklisted. They can be silenced through denial of funding. They can be, I think, openly maligned just by this kind of setting the tone at the top that you don't need to do an econometric study, right? Changing the authority of researchers themselves, and all of these, of course, can be combined. I'm really interested in Andrzej's last point about lessons learned, and if there are some lessons learned, some sort of some good news or things that you did well or that you accomplished, or sort of a mixed track record. I think we would all be interested in understanding those. István, let's go to you. You talked about the invisible university. You made a very conscious decision to stay in Hungary within this quite comprehensive assault on knowledge and research. What would you say are some of the lessons learned, and perhaps points of light, or use the word successes, things that you could recommend to others in that type of difficult situation?
Thank you. I don't think that I can provide lessons that can certainly be used in other environments. What we should see, first of all, trying to defend academic freedom and the autonomy of institutions in itself is a very important lesson, not only for intellectuals, but for the whole society as well. These governments try to get rid of autonomies in general, not only academic autonomy, even the autonomy of the church. In Hungary, all the churches, especially the most important church, the Catholic Church, is completely dependent financially, socially, and in other respects as well on the government. The local autonomies have been taken away. All sorts of institutional autonomy have been taken away or are in real danger in the country. So when the university, which usually is in a better position than some other institutions in a country, try to fight for autonomy, it is a very important lesson for other organizations, other entities whose autonomy is in danger. On the other hand, we ourselves in academia learn a lot about ourselves. And I think that when universities try to fight for academic freedom, it should be made clear that this is not for the institution, it's for the freedom to think, the freedom to say what you really think. Because glorifying anti-intellectualism, the moral innocence, even superiority of the ordinary, uneducated, pious, true-born Christians, and this is the discourse in Hungary at the moment. This is not something specifically Hungarian. I think that this is a story which is familiar to the American audience. There are some similarities, as the famous American sociologist Richard Hofstadter observed, with the deep suspicion against Easterners in the American society, who allegedly insult the people of the great Midwest, the heart of America. The so-called practical culture connected to Protestantism in the US and evangelism was rooted in the so-called pioneer mentality, being allegedly close to and value nature the small community, the practical skills. But this is not what is the case today in the mind of those who ridicule those who for whom reasoning and argumentation is still important. Intellectual activity for these right-wing populists is just talk. And it is not the practical culture of the Protestant ethos what they have in mind. When Viktor Orbán talks about the opposite of worthless, useless theorizing, and talks about supposedly traditional Hungarian virtues, he talks about cunning, the skill to outfox others. He does not refer to common sense, but rather to the ability to fool other human beings. So I think that what is important for the university to show that this is not just the people who are in this institution, but about the sanity of the society, which is in danger. And this is what we should try to defend against these governments.
István, thanks very much indeed for that. Johanna, same to you. Lessons learned or experiences you might like to share with our audience.
Well, we're in the third year of the current administration. Our first response, our natural response to the attacks and generally to the discourse of the president was to try and correct the record. We still do that with facts, but it is kind of difficult to correct a president that has an X addiction. He tweets around 330 tweets a month with an average of 430 characters. So trying to control the narrative only fuels to the disinformation. So we've moved towards two strategies. The first one is moving forward or perhaps sideways. So we've sought the help of local authorities. For example, in the COP16, the climate change conference that took place in Cali last year in Colombia, we sought the help of the governor, and she gave us a space when the minister was not as open to give us a space. We have also seek allies in our friends in the other universities. We have partnered with multiple public universities and private universities and have strengthened alliances in the country. Silver lining to everything, we work together much more than we did on the past. So the alliances, we see cooperation between universities, not just as academic cooperation, mobility or research cooperation, but now we also see them really as partners to think and to ally how we're going to face these new challenges. And the other response, a little bit more in the line that István was pointing, we have tried to move from correcting specific facts and have to admitting that perhaps as universities, we have not done what's necessary to convince public opinion of the importance of education and of research. So we have also tried to argue more broadly of the relevance of excellent and quality education, not just access to education, but quality education, and also try to rebuke the elitist narrative by explaining how research is a great business. We need it for the economy. We need fertilizers. We need better roads. We need knowledge of navigation. And doing that job over and over again, and recognizing perhaps that we took ourselves for granted, because sometimes in the best scenario, people think that universities will always survive, and that it's not the best thing to invest right now, and that's not the case. So we are also not only us alone, but using our allies to try to correct that narrative. Currently, we're working with the city of Bogota to together create a narrative of the city as a city of science and academic activity, kind of put that in the social discourse again. It's still a work in progress, but I think when you ask what we should have done differently, perhaps we should have done this to begin with.
No, that's really interesting and super helpful to think about scaling to different types of political partners, as well as telling the micro stories of research in general and its utility, but on sort of specific issues and how that needs to be part of the messaging. John, let's go to you and some of your lessons learned in all that's been happening in the last few years.
Yeah, some similar things and some that might be a bit different, I think. One is that I think we, over the 4+ years that we have been resisting, we have, I think, learned the importance and the power of coming together as a community, as a university community, and especially stakeholders of that university, meaning not just academics, but also students, the alumni, the employees of the university, especially unionized employees of the university, but as well as what has been, I think, impressive and to me is the fact that it's not just the university community, but all those people who are affiliated with the university community. For example, our families have become part of the community of this university, which is traditionally you wouldn't think of that maybe. The other thing is this the solidarity that we were able to kind of organize as this community, standing against the government and what the appointed president has been trying to do. We've been able to kind of stand firm and hold our ground for 4+ years. Which also, I think this was also mentioned, that we learned a lot from each other. We also had a chance to think about what it means to be a university, what it means to be an academic. That was also very useful. It was a very important learning experience for all of us, I think. And also organizing different forms of resistance. For example, you know, we talked about the symbolic academic vigil, you know, with our gowns, turning our backs at the rectorate building, et cetera, but that's not the only thing that we've been doing. One of the important activities has been on the legal front. We have been organizing these legal challenges, taking the university administration to court so many times. I think there are over 200 court cases right now that are going on, and pointing out that what they're doing is actually unconstitutional, against the law, and we've been quite successful, even at this day and age of an oppressive regime in Turkey, you know, with our legal challenges. But even if we're not successful in the court, it is a way of making sure that there's a public record of everything that has been done by the university appointed university government. So I think the legal route is very significant. Also, we've spent a lot of time trying to raise public awareness. In a way, some kind of a public relations campaign using visuals, graphics, photographs, videos, the press, especially whatever is left of the independent press in Turkey, using social media, issuing weekly bulletins, appearing on television, writing op-eds in the newspapers, for example. So we're really trying to not only have our voices heard publicly, but also be able to kind of amplify those voices. And similar to the, I was really impressed about the invisible university or the flying university. We've been trying to do something similar in Turkey for a while, actually, with all the academics who have been dismissed from their positions, carrying our teaching outside of the walls of the university, so to speak. So organizing these open lectures, we have something called Academy in Resistance right now, and every Monday we are giving these public lectures, but also doing our academic work as a part of this resistance, writing articles related to the workings of a university and how it should be, writing reports that could be used when the political situation changes as to how the universities should and could be restructured, but also organizing conferences, panels, etc., to kind of include the resistance into our academic work, so to speak. And all of these, I think, methods is maybe one way to explain how this resistance could be continuing for such a long time.
Very interesting. Have a follow-up on that just quickly. Who is the audience for these panels like that you organize? If you're educating about the situation, is it the public, the community, local authorities? Like, how do you decide?
Well, the local authorities, well, I mean, yeah, we had good relationships with local governments, meaning the municipalities, etc., or the opposition parties. So definitely that is one of the audience, but also public at large, university students in other universities, academics. So both internal, in terms of our university community, but internal in the sense of academic community, but also external, meaning not only public at large, but also public officials, etc. So it's a very broad, I think, audience that is, so to speak, our target audience.
Great, thanks for that. I would also encourage the audience, before we go to Andrzej for his lesson learned, to keep the questions coming on the Q&A. We'll have some time for some Q&A with the panelists. And Andrzej, to you on your lessons learned.
Our lessons are lessons of, I would say, relative success. First of all, I would like to say, to respond to what I believe Johanna said, that the critique by the government was concerning the elitist nature of education. This was exactly the same in Poland. They were always trying to convince the public that they are building the real plurality, that actually the mainstream education was trying to build sort of a elitist education. This is precisely about the reversing the real meaning of the words. This has happened in Poland. However, why we succeeded? Fortunately, we did not need to go in the direction which István was describing, into the direction of invisible institutions of education. Hopefully, to the institutional, let's say, architecture of our educational and higher education system, Polish Academy of Sciences is still a relatively independent institution. We were to, in a way, we were to rely on the support of the Polish Academy of Sciences, and it came. They were supporting us against the minister, which I do not know whether it would be possible, for example, in Hungary, because Polish Academy of Sciences has been not destroyed by the peace, law and justice government at that time, which definitely tried to build sort of a pseudo-authoritarian regime. So first we got support from the authorities of the Polish Academy of Sciences. And then what built our power, or at least our resilience, was the solidarity. And what we really needed and what we got was the concrete, it was many concrete manifestations of this solidarity. First, not only by the Polish Academy of Sciences, then by the scientific community. More than 4,000 letters signed by by various representatives of community of scholars, not only from Poland. Then media support, then support by lawyers who convinced us that the minister had no right to deprive us of the money which we were absolutely in a position to get. And then finally and silently, he decided to give us this money. So this was the success. He didn't announce this, but he simply transferred money to our account. I would say that the additional factor which helped us to result in this, let's say, success was not only the support, but also the role of the sociology in Poland, which was always, even under communism, relatively autonomous discipline, and the role of the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology of the Polish Academy of Sciences, who is not university, but we are training doctoral students, so in a partially we are university, and we were always trying to think in terms of our mission, in terms of, let's say, participating in the official and public debate, to take part in it and to be open and to be heard, I would say. And not only in Polish, let's say, circumstances, but also in the international ones. I remember, and in May the 2nd, 2017, I wrote personal letter to Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, protesting against closing CEU in Budapest. It was not, surprising, because it was obvious for me and for my chairman of my scientific council to mail this letter. But what was a bit surprising was that I got personal reply from Viktor Orban, who wrote that I greatly value your interest towards Hungary, and I would like to express my gratitude for your kind letter. I do have to inform you, however, that the claims you have made do not correspond with reality. And then he was trying to convince me that I am simply misinformed. So I'm trying to say that, solidarity and concrete manifestations of solidarity are the core element of this relative success, which I would say, of course, there were many other attempts to control science by the former government. However, as a matter of fact, we succeeded as for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrzej, also for sharing that experience with having written to the Hungarian Prime Minister. We have a few questions. I'm going to ask for some brief comments on them. I think they're all really interesting. I want to start with this question that comes from Mark Swelling, who's asking on a comment on if any of the alumni in your universities have been key in this effort to keep universities independent within the sort of headwinds that you have been facing. So who would like to take that? John, would you like that? Then István, I might go to you and ask you about Soros as well as alumni.
Yeah, because I guess I could respond quickly. I mentioned our alumni quite often in what I said so far. The alumni have been very crucial as part of the resistance. Not only, for example, coming to the campus and in person and being with us, standing with us, but also providing kind of logistical support, financial support, and having 200+ court cases with all the lawyers is a very expensive endeavor, and we can't afford that on our own. So our alumni's support in so that we can pursue this legal battles, I think, has been very crucial. So yes, definitely alumni have been very significant part of our resistance.
Yeah, István, your alumni network is vast, of course, of the CEU. Maybe a comment from you about that, and also a question that was put in the chat about the relationship of the university and the CEU on the funding from open societies, and how can you claim independence when the university itself was set up by a philanthropist with a very particular point of view?
Yes. The university has an endowment, and asking us whether we are independent because we had and still have a special relationship with George Soros is something like asking Rockefeller University about their relationship with the Rockefeller family, and whether the graduate university in New York could be an independent institution despite this relationship. But besides that, George Soros was a student of Karl Popper, and what he learned from Popper, from his ideas concerning open society, was that nobody is in possession of the final truth. So he is skeptical about claims, and he himself is not in the position to say definite claims concerning specific topics that are in the expertise of the university. But I would like to say something else. Allow me to try to turn around the perspective. And I would like to say that we, academics, also have a responsibility for the present situation. It seems to me that in the past decades, we were unable to come up with satisfactory answers about the most pressing issues of the times, like migration, like freedom of expression at the time of new technologies, the growing financial, economic, social inequality in the world. We were in the defensive. We were unable to come up with really persuasive positions how to deal with these issues, and let the demagogues on the extreme right to come up with allegedly acceptable, radical, inhuman solutions or ideas when facing all these problems. And I think that in this new situation, we have to interrogate ourselves and look into the mirror and try to find out what did we not well, and how to find answers, satisfactory answers, which are along our moral and scholarly principles, and try to find answers to these questions, and help the people outside the universities with these suggestions on our part. I think that it is also a very important task, obligation in this moment for us inside the universities.
Thank you for that, István. Johanna, I'd like to go to you and ask you a couple related questions from Marilyn Schramm, which is, one is, any advice on overcoming this public perception that academic institutions are elitist or pushing a particular ideology? And could there be a role for online education, right? Is there a potential role here for trying to counter the perception that this is sort of an enclosed elite bubble by giving a sense of some of the courses and some of the things that we do?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you very much. Actually, our president is currently working very hard to partner with universities outside from Bogota. We do research all over the country, but not necessarily we partner academically with all of the country. And being able to work with universities in remote area virtually, and sharing classes and sharing spaces is key to convince the population as a whole, not to convince, to show, to make sure they feel part of the common project that we're trying to build. That doesn't mean that we have always to be in agreement. And a good thing about this government is that it has kind of thrown an alarm that we were just too slow in justifying our social role. We cannot assume that we don't need to tell people over and over again why it is important to do research, why is innovation important, why creativity is important, and why for that we need freedom. Why, even if a country can have specific priorities, and sometimes they're good, one thing is to have priorities, a very different one is to hinder academic freedom, academic research, the liberty to research whatever you need to research. Fine. So yeah, the question is, what are we are learning? We need to be better at doing that, at justifying ourselves, and at admitting that we need to justify ourselves. I think that's the first like lesson learned, like admittance that we do need to justify our social role. The second thing is we need to go outside and open the university, bring the university outside of the university to all kinds of audiences. And that includes our going back to the alumni question, brings our alumni back to kind of refresh the discourse and together try to change the narrative of the public opinion. And the third thing that you say is specific actions like virtual education, they are key because it allows us to access places of the country and of the region generally, of the Latin American region, that physically it would just be too difficult. So thank you very much for that question.
Thank you for that. Andrzej, I'd like to go to you with a specific question and perhaps ask all the panelists to weigh in on it in the last sort of just 30-second soundbite. The question of faculty. Debbie Cohen sort of mentions this in her question. How do you handle fissures within the faculty in universities that come under stress? While there is some unity in the community, sometimes faculty from different perspectives, different schools, different political backgrounds.
I would say that generally there is unity. Of course, it depends. I would say in a Polish case, it depends on the discipline. Sociology was always united along, let's say, the more central liberal vision of reality and the future. Historians, economists are a bit different, political scientists as well. However, what I would like to say is that, convincing public by the community of scientists is a very, very difficult task right now, because we are challenging very strong anti-rational, anti-scientific, and anti-academic movements. All these movements which are related with the anti-vaccination and so on and so forth, they are also related to that. And the dominant vision of the reason is a common sense right now. This is also penetrating, actually, I would say, in Poland as well, that the common sense is the myth which many of the Polish politicians are referring to. So that's why I think that we as a, community of scholars, we have to convince public that without science, there would not have been the progress we are, encountering for, let's say, for hundreds of years. But this requires a new language.
Thank you, Andrzej. We're almost at time. István and John, same to you. Just really quickly on unity in the faculty here.
It's difficult. When there is external pressure on an institution, then usually it shows from the inside as well. We are in a difficult situation. There were parts of the faculty who really wanted to move as quickly as possible, and there were others who felt that it was not possible to do that. And it's a sad story, and I don't want to to hide it. When something like this happens to a community, I don't want to idealize the situation. We pay a very, very high price for that too.
Thank
usually.
you. John, same to you.
Yeah, I think what is just said is absolutely true. I completely agree with that. It is a very difficult situation, and there are different people who are affected very differently when this external pressure comes to a university. But at the same time, it does exist, these fissures rather, and at the same time, it brings us together. That's the other side of the coin. But it is true that there are a lot of people who have suffered greatly when we're under attack by the government, which is so powerful. Of course, we're just a public university trying to resist this huge government, and in the Turkish case, this one-man rule that has been going on for almost 23 years right now. So it is a very difficult situation, and it does have its effects on the faculty too. So especially in terms of our academic output, it's a different topic, of course, but yeah.
Colleagues, we are at time, a little bit over time. That's my fault, but I want to thank all of you for your contributions. This has been a really remarkable conversation and for sharing your experiences. Thank you to the audience for joining us on this Friday, and I do hope we can continue these conversations and collaborations. And on behalf of the Buffett Institute and Colombia's Committee on Global Thought, thank you again, and wishing you a good rest of Friday. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.